Good morning, everybody. I'm Pam Perry, and I'm here to talk today about those wonderful culinary fall planted herbs that we're anticipating. We've been anticipating all summer. I am a member of the Arizona Herb Association, and I'm a master gardener with Maricopa County Cooperative Extension. And I want to first bring to your attention that there's a lot more information than just this little half hour. We've got available for you the Desert Gardening for Beginners Handbook, and there's herb planting calendars in here and other good planting information. This is available through your Maricopa County Master Gardeners down at 4341 East Broadway Road and online at Maricopa Master Gardeners. Great little book, and recommend it for all your gardening activities, but definitely for your herbs. Where did that go? The Arizona Herb Association also publishes a great little herb book. And every month it lists what we're supposed to plant, what we should be doing to maintain our gardens, what we can be harvesting, and some of the ways we can use our herbs on a monthly basis. The Arizona Municipal Water Users Association has their great handbook of plants for the low desert, and a number of even culinary herbs are included in that book, along with some great desert herbs that we forget perhaps were used as herbs before Europeans made it to this continent. Additionally, seed catalogs are a great resource of information on growing herbs and varieties of herbs. Everything from many shades of parsley to flavors of basil and on. They're a great resource. You can find them easily online, and you can order hard copies to have handy for perusing when you've got time to sit still and want to hold something interesting in your hands. Great information there. There are any number of herbals, books about herbs, available. The old school people like me, we love books. We do. And I've got great books in my cupboard. I've got piles of them. There's that kind of information is easily available online as well. What we remember about herbals is that they are written for everywhere else in the world. And we are different here. So the culinary, the recipes are tremendous. How to save and preserve herb suggestions are great. The craft ideas are well beyond my skill set, but they're interesting. The history and the lore is all great, but the planting information is skewed to other parts of the world and isn't always applicable here. So take it with a grain of salt and go back to the two local resources for that information. The Arizona Herb Association is an active group of gardeners who maintain a demonstration garden at the Maricopa County Cooperative Extension office at 4341 East Broadway Road. You can see herbs growing in the ground, happily or not. There's a series of not going on right now. It was a tough monsoon. And see what you can look forward to when you start planting these into your gardens and landscapes. And you'll find the Arizona Herb Association at the Master Gardener Fall Metro Tech Festival on the 30th of October, downtown at the Metro Tech campus high school downtown. You can look up Metro Tech campus and find that online as well. So today, short series of ideas here. We're going to talk about those herbs we can plant. That's why we're here. And some about the site selection and planting so that you're successful growing them. And we will definitely take a little bit of time to give a nod on ways to harvest and use and preserve these guys because they're fun. When we try to decide which herbs we want to plant, look at what you're buying in the market. Do you bring home bunches of fresh parsley? Is that Trader Joe's basil an important part of your shopping list? Do you keep the sages? Do you buy sage and use that? Are you a cilantro aficionado? Are you collecting some spices at the grocery store? Maybe some of those you can actually grow here and have very, very fresh. So look at what you're using to drive your first herb selections. When you're buying plants in a nursery, taste a little bit of that leaf. There may be four or five kinds of rosemaries available on that shelf for sale. They will not all taste the same. So it really helps for you to taste them a little bit so that you are picking the one that tastes good to you. We all have different ways of interpreting flavors, so that's a good hint. Perennials, herbs come perennial and they come annual. My little parsley that we're going to talk about all day long, that's an annual here. It'll bloom and make seed for us before the end of spring and summer starts. We expect that here. So we buy it, we plant it, we use it, and we expect it to expire when the weather gets hot. Rosemaries, on the other hand, are quite perennial, and we can locate them and treat them according to their demands as a long-lived plant. We grow herbs because they're tasty, and we grow them because they enhance what we're cooking. So we want to plant them somewhere convenient so that they are where we can just step out the back door and snip some so they're super fresh when we're adding them to whatever it is we're cooking. A lot of these you'll notice on the upcoming slides, we can plant from plants we purchase at the nursery, but a lot of them are available as seeds. And you can order or buy seeds local. We have great seed sources locally, and you can plant a lot of these from seed and start a couple of batches if you have room, so that you always have a fresh supply as the season progresses. So this slide indicates the variety. I include the Latin names, not to be snooty, but because it's very important if you're going to start eating plants that you know what you're eating. And it's very important when we come to that one called sage, because here in the desert, lots of plants are called sage. Our Texas Rangers or leucophyllums are called sage. Our artemisias or our sagebrush is called sage. Phlomis or Jerusalem sage is called sage. And there's probably 4 or 5 more that if we worked at it, we could list. If you put any of those in the turkey dressing, you're going to disappoint a whole lot of people at Thanksgiving. What you're truly looking for when you're buying the culinary herb sage is Salvia officinalis. And you really want to make sure that's what's on the tag. And it follows down the line. Helps you identify the plant that you're actually owning and buying and eating. And then in the column that says seed or plant, you can plant it fresh out of the pot and it'll do well, or if you've got a package of seeds, you can plant them according to the calendars and the season and grow them from seed if you have time to do so. There are some that are better from plants. So as we look at a parsley, I sow parsley from seed a couple of times a year. And if I'm in a hurry to get one going, I'll put that little guy in the ground real fast. Sage needs about 8 to 10 months in the nursery to grow as big as it is when we plant it and we buy it in a pot at the store to plant in the ground. So it needs a much longer maturing time. It's quicker for us because sage doesn't often last through the summer to buy an established, well-grown plant that will continue to grow for us once we get it in the ground. Rosemary, I buy them small. We can buy them in 5-gallon buckets. It's a matter of what we taste. And we can plant them. Planting rosemary from seed is a very long-term proposition. It's fun to try, but if you want to pick rosemary soon, buy a plant. Time is very short-lived here. If you get it through the summer, I want to know how you did it, because it usually suffers during monsoon and expires. So I start with young plants in the fall, and then we go forth. And a lot of times I may add a couple more in the spring because I like thyme a lot and I use it. So it's always getting a haircut at my house. It never gets very big. Garlic, chives, and chives, all in the onion or lily family. Garlic chives is easy from seed. Chives is fairly easy from seed and not always long-lived as well. So sometimes you want a head start with a plant, that's okay. And garlic, we like garlic. It's an herb. It lands in our vegetable gardens, but it can be considered an herb, absolutely. And this is one I grew last year and it will go in the ground this year. I saved some to plant. We get a head. You can plant grocery store garlic, or you can order some really interesting garlic from garlic sources, seed catalogs. The difference between those and the ones in the grocery store is the ones you buy from a catalog or buy at your nursery have been grown in soil that is certified to be disease-free. The one we buy in the grocery store is certified to be not going to harm us, but they're not worried about us planting it, so they don't go down that road. A garlic head gets broken into pieces, just like if we were going to be cooking with it. And he is planted flat end down, pointy end up, and covered with about as much soil as he is big. So this one, 2 to 3 inches trench, down in he goes. Garlic likes really well amended soil. It's a shallow planted crop, so don't let it dry out too much between irrigation and you will grow. Fresh garlic is just awesome. It'll spoil you. Watercress, arugula, and curly cress are all peppery, spicy, hot. If you're growing one, you probably don't need the other two. It's a matter of figuring out which one you like best and then isolating. They're all great from seed, but if you can find a plant, you've got a head start, whatever works. And winter savory, again, is a plant that takes a number of months to reach what I think of as, in a nursery pot, a saleable size, something you can, it will survive a summer better than thyme, so you can start from seed, but if you're in a hurry to do some harvesting, it is better to buy a started plant. There's 4 more that are great fall planted herbs that I should give you some warnings. Cilantro will set seed if the temperatures are above 80 degrees. Right now, our evening temperatures are hovering well above 80 degrees. This is not a good time to plant cilantro. It'll come out of the ground, panic because it's hot, make seed and die, and it'll get this big. So we wait until probably November, late October if we're lucky, and we start planting cilantro. If you're ready to harvest some cilantro, buy a plant. Keep harvesting, but if it gets out in the heat, it's going to try to go into its I want to make seed mode. When it does this spring make seed, you are now growing coriander, because mature seed from a cilantro plant is the spice coriander. And fresh coriander will spoil you forever, and you'll never want to open another cellophane packet of coriander ever again. Mints, we'll find lots of nice mints. There were several in the nursery yesterday. They go dormant when our days get really cooler and the days get really short. They're settled in, we've got them rooted out, but don't panic, they're not dying. They're just going to sleep for the winter. And as the days get longer and the soils warm up, they begin to grow again. Just don't overwater them while they're taking this rest during the long part of winter, that November, December, early January phase. Dill and fennel. 2 of my absolute favorite fall planted herbs. They grow easily from seed, but there are always great plants available too if you just haven't quite gotten to the seed rack yet. But each one of those as a plant wants to be about 4.5 to 5 feet tall and about this big around, which means that you are going to have to give it some elbow room in the garden. You're not going to put 4 of them in a little pot and think they're going to be happy. They're going to get stressed and have insect problems and all sorts of things we don't want. So plan on your spacing. Read the backs of your seed catalogs, read the labels, do a little research so you know what the expectations of these plants are going to be. Most of the rest of them are okay with 1 foot to 18 inches of space, and they don't get really, really tall. They're kind of organized and tidy, but those dills, they get big. Site selection is critical to grow herbs. They really do like sun. And so they want 6 to 8 hours of full sun. If it's morning sun, they're happier, but they can endure a good deal of afternoon sun, especially all during the winter months. The sun, we don't count the hours of sunshine from the time when the almanac says we got sunrise. It has to be up overhead, which is about 9 o'clock in the morning. So from 9 to 4, especially around solstice, you get about 6 hours of sun, and that's with the sun right overhead. If you're planting them in too shady a spot, herbs will get stretchy. They won't be as robust. You won't get nearly the kind of active growth, so it means you're not going to be able to harvest as much. You really, as the sun moves going into the later part of the spring and gets more intense, we can extend our season of harvest with these herbs by providing some shade. We can always make shade. We can rig something up, but it's really hard to make sure we're getting enough full sunlight to make them happy plants. Herbs come from places with good drainage. Sometimes that is not our gardens. So we have to enhance our soils with the necessary ingredients to make sure that they're getting good drainage. If we're doing container gardens, we always want to have a hole in the bottom of the pot that we're not blocking with something. We want to be able to irrigate our herbs. My winter watering schedule is pretty lax. We get some rain, the days are short, it's cool, they're not using a lot of water, it's not evaporating. As the days get warmer, as we go into spring, I need to get that hose out, because mine are right out the back doors, and make sure I'm paying attention so that I always have fresh herbs when I go out into the garden to harvest. So if you've got them in a garden with drip system, absolutely great. But if you're potting them near your back door, remember you need to be able to get a hose to them, and you want to be able to get to them easily, because you want to be able to just step out with your snips and pick a bunch of parsley to finish that soup. You want to grab a couple of sage leaves to tuck in when you are glazing your carrots. I mean, there's lots of great ways to use herbs that are just right out the door. Another part of accessibility, we have been known in the valley to get the odd frost in the winter. Most of these will tolerate a good deal of cool temperatures if we have established them and gotten them growing. Nasturtiums will not. Crinkly cress will not. So there are certain ones that we will want to protect from a hard frost as it comes down the road. So we want to have our frost protection available as well. And if those herbs are handy and out the door, we'll do it. Not only are there great leafy green herbs, but there's some fun edible flowers, so you don't have to have a boring pot of green leaves. Nasturtiums are peppery and spicy. We can eat the leaves, we can eat the flowers, we can eat the flower buds, and before they get all hard and crunchy, we can even eat the little seed pods. Pansies and violas say winter and happy. They've got smiley faces. You can tuck. They don't have a lot of demand from life. They're easy. You can tuck them into anything. They will grow and bloom all winter long. They're edible. They taste good. They're sweet. Violets, again, another sweet little flowering plant that brings just a hint of a little spiciness to a salad, or decorates a cake or a cupcake, or even sugar cookies once we get past Christmas. So they're fun plants. They tuck into containers. They tuck into a corner of the bed. German and Roman chamomile. Other places distinguish very critically between these two plants, not because of the flavor or the height or the habit, but because one dies and one is perennial. Here, they're both annual. They both die. Come spring, they make flowers. We harvest the flowers for tea or whatever we're using chamomile for. And then the plant goes all crispy and we don't take it personally. So whichever chamomile you find available, either in seed or in plants, will work just fine in your garden, and expect them to expire come spring. Borage is very frost tender. The little blue flowers are totally beautiful. They are edible. The little fresh baby leaves, this is baby green for short, they taste like cucumbers. Once they get more mature, they're prickly. They still taste like cucumbers, but the texture changes for sure. And last but not least, carnations, clove pinks, dianthus of any kind, a real classic annual flower in our winter collections. Totally edible. You can decorate the platter, you can decorate the food itself and not worry about somebody eating it. It's great for you. Come other scented, scented geraniums. These are plants that you want to leave room for. They're not on the list. They're not on the list because they are spring planted. They're not on that fall planted list because they really are either frost sensitive or they really need super longer days to grow and thrive and establish. As our days get progressively shorter, they sit there and stare at us. And they may make it through a winter, but we are ensured much quicker and effective success if we grow these plants come spring. So if you're trying to organize and plan for the long term, remember that as some of those fall planted annual herbs begin to expire or we've consumed them into oblivion, there's an alternative. There's something more to fill the space and your garden will not be empty. So we've got a few that are perennial, and these can actually be planted into a desert landscape. They will live on desert landscape shrub watering schedules, and you'll find those in that Arizona Municipal Water book on watering. So rosemary, we see it planted everywhere. They put it in the medians between lanes on the highways. It's a tough plant. Garlic chives is indestructible. And if you let it go to seed and you have water in too many places, you'll have more than you know what to do with. It's very successful. Flat-leaved, taste of garlic, ephemeral oils. We use it at the very end of cooking. It dissipates in heat. The flowers are edible. You can buy bunches of buds in our Asian markets. They're used in cooking in a lot of the Asian cultures, so mine are ready to harvest at home. Oreganos and marjorams, great, tough Mediterranean plants that tolerate poor soils. They need some drainage, but they love the heat, and they're harvestable all year long. So they're really good landscape plants. Lavenders will go in a landscape. If we have a very moist, humid, rainy summer, you may lose a lavender or two. Don't take it personally. This is just who they are. Lavender is great in herbs de Provence, is where it shows up most commonly, but it can be used both sweet and savory. We can use the leaves and the flowers. Again, taste before you buy. There's many, many, many kinds of lavenders. They don't all taste alike. And you may decide that you don't like that one over there at all. Yick. And this one's really good. I have some personal preferences. I like sweet lavender, heterophylla. That's mine. But I will eat others. I'm not a real... Mexican oregano is a native bush. It's a Lipia graveolens. And it's a great big, angular, homely bush. Put it in the back of the yard. It's a great desert-adapted plant. It's good for the pollinators. And when you buy oregano in those cellophane packages, that's what you're getting. It's got all the essential oils. Makes great pizza, makes good oregano, anything. And you'll always have some. Lemongrass, definitely tropical. The Asian tropical along that equatorial rainy zone. So we get it planted in the spring and it grows. I keep mine in a pot, and I know when I'm supposed to water because it is really clear when it gets underwatered. So it's a good tattletale plant to have in your collection. It tells you everybody's going to need a drink soon. It's very happy in the ground. It gets huge. The one in the pot, I keep giving pieces away, even though I use it fairly aggressively. You got to take it apart and make it smaller, otherwise it just keeps growing. Use your lemongrass if you plant it. So the asterisks on here, fall planting is fine, and the little hatch marks, definitely perennial for your garden. They can live in pots, but if you have a place in the landscape that's handy to the back door, they can live there too. I'm a seed planting cuckoo. I just love planting seeds, and I get all these little seed rows of green leafy herbs. Flat-leafed parsley and curly parsley and the pepper grass and the celery, and we keep going down. And then you go through and you come out with a little basket and you collect a little bit of everything. And it goes into whatever you're cooking, and it goes into all kinds of ways of preserving it because I'm growing it right there in rows. I'm not just one little plant at a time. They're easy. You follow the package instructions. It will tell you how thick or how thin to put the seeds, how deep to plant them. It will tell you how thin to thin them, how to space them. And it will tell you very much on watering and care, how long it's going to take. And yes, parsley really does take 3 weeks. Don't give up. It says 21 days, and it means it. But once you get through there, you suddenly got parsley. So read those instructions because they do know what they're talking about. And I thin, they're tasty when they're 2 and 4 and 6 leaves big. They work just fine. They go in a salad. They add a little zip to the lettuce, and they're good for you. Containers. I love, this is a colander. We say drainage is essential. What better drainage can we get than this great? And it was a great big colander. It was huge. In the winter, 14 inches is about as small as we should go ever. Those cute little 8-inch azalea pots you see on people's stair steps in the garden magazines, not here. You'll make the plants miserable and you will never grow enough to harvest. So look at the bigger pots. You want to be able to use about a cubic foot of soil in a container. If you've got bigger containers, maybe 2 or 3 plants can go in there. But you want to give them ample room. We need to have the nutrients and the water available for them to grow a big, robust plant that we can just keep picking leaves off of, because we're going to keep picking leaves off of it. If you're planting perennial plants, the ones that are going to live for a long, long time, you want to use a cactus mix, or you want to use a mineral-based mix because it won't decompose, leaving your plant halfway down the pot. For those annuals that we're always adding in season to season, we can always replenish with fresh soil. So pick your soil to match your planting, and we'll be off and running. So mixing things up. I plant parsley and geraniums together because they look good. But you can put nasturtiums in there and eat the nasturtiums. Leafy herbs can be planted as a row between quick to finish root crops. When you've harvested those, the herbs will have room to grow. Those dills could fit right in there, or that fennel, or even that cilantro, which when it really gets going, gets big if you don't eat it fast. So analyze what your gardening is looking like and choose ways to make sure that you have room to expand for your herbs as other crops get harvested and consumed. So pests. Oh, sure, we always get pests. But if you do some good cultural information, providing enough water, proper sunlight, and not too much fertilizer for herbs, we can make shade as the season gets hotter. We talked about that. Don't irrigate too much your herbs, which means come winter, we're really not nearly as busy with the hose as we are in the summer. Changing seasons. Those annuals are going to be stressed come April, whatever you do, because they are annuals and all they really want to do is sit, seed, and die. Crowding plants together. Give them elbow room. They want to be pretty good sized plants. You're going to need a foot to 18 inches for most of these things. So don't crowd too many in thinking more is better. Less is definitely more in this case. I bought this little guy yesterday. And I looked at him. There are no less than 5 plants in here. That is 5 plants. That is 4 plants too many for something this big. I have a couple of choices. I can pull him out and put him in a bucket of water and just slosh him till the plants fall apart. And then I can plant 5 plants. Or I can harvest and eat 4 plants. It's okay, either way. You don't want to crowd them. I've seen as many as 10 basils in a pot. That's just problem city. So don't crowd your herbs. If you have aphids, wash them with a hose. It's easy, it's fast. You will win eventually. Whiteflies, we treat them pretty much the same as aphids. Caterpillars, if something's munching, you got to go look for him. He'll be green just like your herbs, I'll guarantee it. And then dispatch him. Butterflies have caterpillars and moths have caterpillars. I've fed sage to moths for 4 years. It's, you go looking, they're there. You see caterpillar poo before you actually see the caterpillar. Birds, I use nylon net, especially when I'm doing seed rows because they love to pull little seedlings out to the ground. And spittlebugs show up on rosemaries. It's that white frothy stuff. Looks icky. Wash it off. It's okay. No harm done. Just get out the hose. Last but not least, you're growing them. Use them. They're wonderful. They taste great. They add depth and excitement and freshness to anything we're cooking. Even plain old tomato soup doesn't hurt to have a little fresh rosemary or thyme sprinkled into it at the last. We can pick and use them fresh. Absolutely. We can pick them and air dry them. We're great. Phoenix is great. I can leave them on the counter. It's dry enough here, they don't mold, they dry. Then I crumble them up, I put them in a jar, and I label them with the date and the variety. Some days I make herb mixes, and I'll mix parts, usually 2 parts, 2 parts, 2 parts, 1 part if I'm doing parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. And it's 1 part rosemary, 2 parts the rest. With that, I can make an herb butter, I can make an herb salt, I can use it just straight up as a dry herb when I'm cooking. So I make mixes with my salts. I add them to whatever is happening in the kitchen, whether it's making vinegars or marinades. And I really, as I grow more and more herbs, I am encouraged to use them and to really research recipes that incorporate a diversity of fresh herbs, because they're right out the back door. And they are so super fresh, they add a lot of personality to the most ordinary of dishes. Thank you all so very much.